One. Hello there, and welcome to the Still Yet to Be Named Sports Podcast. My name is Marco Yerkovich. Joining me on today's episode is Will Byerman.
Shout out to Rugby A.
As well as Tim Seipel.
That's my name.
All right, today we'll be discussing the Antonio Brown saga, ranking the undefeated NFL teams, looking at some Heisman candidates, and much, much more. So let's get right into it right off the top with Antonio Brown retiring from the NFL, kind of, sort of. So your guys' thoughts on the whole debacle and what went down?
Boy, to be honest, when I looked at the script and I saw Antonio Brown, I was like, you're kidding me. I'm so sick of discussing this guy. But then what really made me actually be interested in the topic again was one of the questions you had is, what is Antonio Brown's legacy? And I think that's a question I really haven't heard a lot of people talk about yet. Because if you look at it, the past 2 years with Antonio Brown have felt like a really, really long time. But really, in the world of sports, it's not. So when we get a couple years away, when you look back at the 2010s decade, like when they make their all-decade team and Antonio Brown is on it, you're going to look at it and be like, wow, he flamed out so fast. He was on probably a Hall of Fame track. He was without a doubt the best receiver in the NFL at a certain point. And in 2 years, he is long gone.
Yeah,
ridiculous.
And I
you
think...
talk about Terrell Owens
Yeah, you're right.
and Randy Moss and how much of a head case or a problem they were for their team. But Antonio Brown's got him beat, I think. And I think, unfortunately, that's going to end up being his legacy.
Yeah, Antonio Brown took tarnishing his legacy to the next level. I think he's definitely really put a mark on his career, whether or not, from the beginning. I mean, he comes from a college, Central Michigan, and then comes into the NFL and is just a phenomenal wide receiver, the best in the league. And then within 2 years, he flames out, as Will said, and he's just gone. And so I personally think it's questionable whether or not he will actually be in the Hall of Fame.
So consensus is one of the best receivers of the 2010s was on a Hall of Fame track, and even if you look at his statistics, no one's going to catch Jerry Rice, at least not for a long time, but at least he was the guy who'd be on track to at least be second place. Not likely to happen anymore, but a total diva. So is he out of the NFL? I know his agent, Drew Rosenhaus, has said that there's still a number of teams interested and in discussion. So your guys' thoughts on that?
Well, look, I feel like a lot of that's just agent talk. What agent isn't going to go out there to the media and say, hey, a lot of people want to sign my client? That's just doing your job as an agent. I really can't see there being any interest in him. Part of the fact
this
like the
year, or do you think for the rest of his career?
I'd say give it at least 2 years. I know they did an ESPN. ESPN did a whole poll about it. I think the person I agree with most, Field Yates, said yes, eventually. I think it's going to kind of be like when some big rock band breaks up, or like someone has to go underground because they did something stupid. Like, you lay low a couple years, come back. I'm a changed man. I've learned my lesson. Regular part of society for a bit. Give me a second chance. I think he's done for a while, but I think if he so desires, and it's really hard to tell what Antonio Brown actually wants or cares about anymore, I think if he so desires, in a couple of years, 2 or 3 seasons, I think he'll be back eventually.
Yeah, I'm going to have to disagree with that because you're relying on him having humility. And I think to get back into the league and to get back into a successful place as a wide receiver in the NFL, he's going to have humility and know he did something wrong. And whether or not he will be able to actually own up to it is very questionable. Right now, I don't see him coming into the NFL anytime soon or coming back. Obviously, his talent is unlike any other person that we've seen in a while. And because of that, he becomes a valuable asset for many teams who are not in the same realm as
right.
The
That's
Patriots.
why the Patriots took a shot at him. Obviously, he only lasted 11 days in the organization, not for anything that he did while he was there, but obviously with prior incidents. So we'll see what goes on with the rest of this Antonio Brown saga, how things end, if we'll have any news on that in the coming weeks. But for the time being, that's it for that. So let's just move on to a quick ranking that I had of the undefeated remaining NFL teams. Next week, I will do the ranking of the winless teams. there will for sure at least be a few of them left. So
No Bengals, no Steelers, or one of those teams will be gone.
right.
But that's the only sure thing.
Yeah, that's the sure thing, is that there would at least be two because those teams play and the Jets have a bye. All right, so let's move on to ranking those undefeated teams. First up, I've got the Patriots. The defense has yet to allow a touchdown, and that defense is full of veterans all over the place, smart, especially in the secondary. They've only given up 199 yards per game, which is 85 yards per game less than the second-place defense. Of course, that secondary is probably the best in the league. You still have Tom Brady, who is still Tom Brady, and they still have plenty of weapons. They're fifth in total yardage, and even without Antonio Brown, as we said, they still have Edelman, Josh Gordon, N'Keal Harry's still out. We'll see what he is when he comes back, and of course that huge group of running backs that has always got plenty of talent for New England. Right now it's Sony Michel, Burkhead, and James White. Second, I've got the Chiefs. Of course, you got Mahomes leading the league in yards by more than 200. Then the second place also leads the league with 10 touchdowns without Tyreek Hill and Kareem Hunt. Third, I've got the Cowboys. Everyone's healthy. They're playing well. It's great to have Zeke, obviously, for Dak's sake, and for the rest of the team. They're third in total offense at 481 yards a game. Fourth, I've got the Rams. In my opinion, they've had the hardest schedule in the league to this point, playing the Panthers, Saints, and Browns. They're third in total defense, but Jared Goff has struggled quite a bit, even with getting Cooper Kupp, his kind of safety blanket at wide receiver back. Fifth, I've got the Packers. All the defensive additions in the free agency market and in the draft, taking the pressure off the first-year head coach, Matt LaFleur, and Aaron Rodgers is just doing his thing. Second to last in sixth place, I've got the 49ers. They're fourth in offense and second in total defense, but they haven't really been tested yet. Of course, they've only played the Bucs, Bengals, and the Steelers, but Jimmy G and Kyle Shanahan look to be in great shape right now. Last on the list in seventh, I have the Bills. They're still fifth in defense and fifth in rushing offense, and Josh Allen seems to be getting better as a decision maker, but again, the schedule is the problem. They've only played the Jets, Giants, and the Bengals. So your guys' thoughts on my rankings. Once again, Patriots 1, Chiefs 2, Cowboys 3, Rams 4, Packers 5, 49ers 6, and Bills 7.
I mean, first of all, I actually am a Patriots believer, but I do have to say, for the defensive stats, you have to keep in mind Jets and Dolphins are two of those games. And I don't think enough people are talking about how terrible the Jets actually are. But only real surface problem I have with your rankings is a shout out to the undefeated Detroit Lions, 2-0-1. That's not a loss. But I'd say kind of the only teams that really jump out on that list are the back two, actually. Packers, Cowboys, Rams, all those teams, like you see them, you're like, yeah, those are teams that could go 3-0. But the 49ers and the Bills are the interesting ones because you have to wonder, are they pretenders is the term I know writers like to throw around a lot. Because like teams like the Rams, people think they might fall off. I think they're going to get better. I think Goff's going to kind of spike up a bit. But, I mean, are the 49ers and Bills even playoff teams? You can really make an argument that they won't be. The Niners really just haven't looked like anything special in any of the games I've seen them in, and they played Steelers and Bengals for sure, I know. But you've got a team that, like, they're winning games, and there's always something to be said for being a team that's able to go into the fourth quarter, down a touchdown, and pull a victory out. But they haven't done anything that makes me say, wow, this is a team with elite. Their defensive line, I guess, you can argue that they're elite, but not a lot of elite players on that team. And then the Bills, just you always feel like the wheels will fall off with them.
Yeah, my first take with the New England Patriots, I do not see them as a number one defense. I don't see them as the best secondary, mainly because the three teams that they have faced are all teams that have not won a single game. The Steelers, 0-3. Jets, 0-3. Miami Dolphins, 0-3. You have three teams there that have not won a game, so I do not think that they have faced a real challenge. And whether or not the Bills will be the first challenge, I mean, it will be the first moderate challenge, but they're not going to be at one of the top teams. So I think the Patriots have a little ways to go to truly prove themselves as being a top
right,
defense.
And the Patriots aren't actually going to be tested a whole lot in the first half of the season. I believe their first game against a playoff team from last season is week 7 or 8. they play the Ravens. But other than that, it's pretty much a cakewalk for the first half of the season for the Pats.
Definitely, and I think the Ravens are going to challenge them. I think Lamar Jackson is really going to give them a run for their money. I would also look at the Kansas City Chiefs and the Dallas Cowboys. Obviously, first glance, Kansas City Chiefs offense is electric. You can't. They are phenomenal. I mean, there's nobody that I know that can stop them right now. But the Dallas Cowboys have defense, and that's where the Kansas City Chiefs have been struggling. So whether I think there's a struggle of balance with the Kansas City Chiefs, and I like the Dallas Cowboys maybe a little bit better. And I also like the Green Bay Packers a little bit better because I think within the next couple of weeks, the Green Bay Packers will be up to number 2 or number 3 slot, mainly because the Green Bay Packers have not had their offense running like they have had in the past couple of years. I think once Aaron Rodgers gets in his stride with this new system, he's going to be just as explosive as Patrick Mahomes, and it's going to really bring this full circle.
Yeah, and we're, again, only 3 weeks into the NFL season, so obviously there's going to be not necessarily a margin of error, but a couple of teams that really haven't played anyone yet, and we're still finding out who teams really are, but that's our base kind of ranking and our analysis for the undefeated teams. Next week, we will have the winless teams. We'll see who's on that list. Probably the Dolphins. For sure the Jets because they have a bye, and at least either the Bengals or the Steelers. So let's move on to our next main topic. So we have a couple major NFL players kind of in the holdout market. Melvin Gordon was the first one we were going to discuss, but he ended his holdout. So your guys' thoughts and quick analysis of what happened with that holdout.
Well, the two leading theories to why, first of all, are that Chargers have really kind of struggled. And so there are people who are of the belief that Melvin Gordon is kind of the key to that team being relevant, or just simply the fact that, good God, guys, have you seen any team that has more major consistent injuries than the Chargers?
It's really unfortunate. It's really ridiculous. Derwin James, Russell Okung, obviously the holdout to Melvin Gordon. There's even more, I'm assuming, that I'm missing. Hunter Henry, that's another one.
They lose players more than any other team, which is disappointing because I really do think Phillip Rivers and the Chargers were, if they had been luckier, could have been a team we talked about in the years down the road as being a pretty good one. But the two factors the two reasons Melvin Gordon's holdout could have ended are, one, just the team needs him more than ever now. But the one I'm more interested in is Austin Eckler actually starting to become a better running back for the Chargers or just the league in general than Melvin Gordon is. Got some stats pulled up for that. So Gordon, we're just going to go by his averages from last year. He averaged 73 yards a game, 5 yards a carry, and he scored 10 touchdowns last season. First 3 games this season, Eckler's at 160 yards, 4.2 per carry, 2 touchdowns on the ground as a running back. Eckler's a very valuable receiver, 208 receiving yards, 19 for 20 on receptions, and he scored 2 touchdowns, and he's had 3 catches of 20 yards or greater. I think personally at this point, Austin Eckler is more valuable for the Chargers in many ways than Melvin Gordon is. Gordon's a good running back too, but for one thing, I think he's making under $1 million this year. He's still in a late round rookie contract. Gordon's expensive. He's injury prone, and I think they're really getting better results with Eckler. So I think that might be the real reason he has to come back at this point, because he sees his starting spot kind of slipping through his fingers there.
Yeah, pretty solid analysis there. I think the discussion that you're having is Austin Eckler, he's a multifaceted running back. Is Melvin Gordon that, or is he just the downhill threat? Can he be more of a receiving threat? Of course, Eckler's had some fumbling problems early in the season. Gordon not necessarily known for that, so we'll see what Gordon can bring to the table. So, Tim, let me just throw it to you to discuss a holdout that is still happening in the league right now. Trent Williams, your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, so Trent Williams is obviously one of the best left tackles in the league, which is probably the most important positions on a team, just because most teams have a right-handed quarterback, and the left tackle is the most important position for protection. He was named to 7 straight Pro Bowl appearances, so he's clearly put himself in a position to be one of the top tackles in the league. But if we look at between this year and last year, the difference is Eric Flowers. So currently, Eric Flowers is the left tackle for the Redskins in place of Trent Williams. And Trent Williams, the reason for his holdout was because of distrust in the front office and the medical team there. But if we look at the first 3 games of last year and the first 3 games of this year, or the averages, in 2019, the yards per carry is 2.8, and last year it's 4.3. So obviously there's a big drop-off, but in the protection of the quarterback, the Redskins' offensive line has only given up 6 sacks compared to last year's 44 sacks. So that would be 32 sacks in one season for this year in comparison to 44 on average. And the difficulty of the defenses has been better this year as they face the Eagles, the Cowboys, and the Bears. So you could even argue that Eric Flowers, just like Austin Eckler for Melvin Gordon, has kind of replaced Trent Williams and even put himself in a better position because he's not as much of a contract threat as he's not on a huge contract like Trent Williams would have been.
Yeah, I think that's the entire philosophy of this, especially from the team's perspective, is when you operate in a next man up philosophy, then these become less of issues. Obviously, both replacements are lower in talent, obviously, not as good as the guys they're replacing, but you have to do it monetarily. Of course, Melvin Gordon folded, and he's going to report back to the Chargers.
Right.
We'll see what Trent Williams' situation is in Washington. You want a little bit more there, Tim?
Yeah, and I want to look at obviously the record of last year. They were 2-1 through 3 games, and this year they're 0-3. But if we look at the completion percentage, last year the average was 61.1% completion percentage for the whole year, and in three games, Case Keenum is throwing 69.4% for completion percentage. So obviously the protection of the QB has improved. The run game has been a little difficult because of the right end, but I think Eric Flowers has really helped with that, and they'll get back in stride easily.
One thing you do have to keep in mind, though, with that is the quarterback system. The quarterbacks are different. Alex Smith is more of a downfield guy than Case Keenum. Case Keenum's always going to have a higher completion percentage because he's a check down guy. But really, the big trend is Austin Eckler signed a 3-year $1.6 million contract. He's not making much. Eric Flowers was basically told by the Giants to leave during their giant implosion last year. So both of these guys they're young, cheap options on the up and up. Trent Williams, don't blame him for wanting to be out of Washington. That's just a quagmire of a franchise. It's like you see the NBA teams who aren't in the lottery, but they're not contending. You're just kind of in that little limbo zone. That's
right,
Washington.
The permanent limbo that a Sacramento Kings or a Detroit Pistons is kind of in. Yeah, so we're going to move on to our next main topic, and we have a few new hosts up for you guys. Paul Hires and Jared DeHaan will be joining us really quick here to do a quick episode of Heisman Watch as we go through some of the guys we think are most likely to obviously contend for or win the Heisman Trophy. So I'll go first here really quick. I've got Jalen Hurts at quarterback for Oklahoma. He's second in the nation in completion percentage. He's got 295 yards a game, 125 on the ground per game, 13 total touchdowns in 3 games, and the 2 previous Heisman winners, Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray, of course, both quarterbacks at Oklahoma in Lincoln Riley's system. So I think that bodes well for Jalen Hurts. Then my non-quarterback is Wisconsin running back Jonathan Taylor, who in very limited attempts, only 58 attempts in 3 games, 440 on the ground, 7 touchdowns. He's a total tank. He actually ran for over 200 yards against Michigan in less than 3 quarters due to an injury he had during the game. All right, so Jared, who do you have as your Heisman contenders right now?
So for my QB option, I chose Justin Fields for Ohio State. And through 4 games, he's currently completing 70% of his passes. He only has 880 yards, but that's also for the opponents they've played. He hasn't had to play that much, so they've been keeping him out. He's had 13 passing touchdowns and no interceptions. And he's also had 150 yards rushing and 6 rushing touchdowns. And for my non-QB, I have Travis Etienne from Clemson. He's again, he plays for Clemson, who's the number 1 team in the country. So he hasn't had as many plays and rushing attempts as well. But through 4 games, he's had 53 rushing attempts for 395 yards and 4 touchdowns. And in those games, he's averaging 7.5 yards per rush.
All right, thank you, Jared, who was joining us. He just had to show his sheep at the Missouri State Fair, so thank you so much for making it to the show in time. Now over to Paul, who's just now breaking his vow of silence from the entire week, from last episode to this episode. Paul, who do you have as your Heisman contenders right now?
All right, so first up, quarterback Joe Burrow for the LSU Tigers. He started his senior season out pretty well. 15-20 total or passing yards, 17 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. And they've been playing some pretty quality defenses to start out. Obviously, Texas put up 45 points, only missed on 8 passes. I really think he's got a chance at this if he can continue to put up numbers like this. And then for my non-quarterback, I have J.K. Dobbins. He's also put up pretty good numbers, 477 rushing yards through the first 4 games and 5 touchdowns, averaging 7 yards a touch. And we'll see how he does against Nebraska this week.
All right, so let's welcome back Tim and Will. Everybody's going to be on right now, and we're just going to do a weekly pick'em. Last week it was just me, Paul, and Jared, and Paul and Jared got 100% of their games. I got 80% of my games, so we're just going to have a running total, see who has the highest percentage after all the football is done. So first game up this week is number 18, Virginia, at number 10, Notre Dame. Saturday, 2:30 on NBC. Jared, who do you have?
I have Notre Dame. I'm just going with the home team. I think they're the easy favorite.
All right, Tim?
Yeah, I mean, I think Notre Dame is really going to take it to Virginia, and I don't think Virginia has a chance in this one.
Paul?
I've got the Irish in this one. Chase Claypool is doing pretty good for them.
All right, Will?
My biggest thing, I really like Ian Book as a quarterback. I think Notre Dame's going to win this, but it's interesting to see Virginia kind of ascend to these rankings. I think they'll be a scrappy team to watch later on.
All right, I have Notre Dame as well, so all 5 of us going with the Irish on that one. Next game up, number 21, USC at number 17, Washington. Saturday at 2:30 on Fox. Jared, who do you have in that one?
I think Eason for Washington will get it done. I think Washington wins big.
All right, Tim?
Yeah, I can't bet against Jacob Eason. I think he's a phenomenal quarterback right now, and he's really pulling it through for Washington. I think Washington's going to take out USC.
All right, Paul?
Great win for USC last week, but I got to go with the Huskies at home. 10-point favorites. Jacob Eason doing good.
All right, Will?
God, I hate doing pick'ems for Pac-12 teams. It's the worst, but, every time I trust Washington in the past couple years, I get burned. USC is a weird roller coaster, but I think I'm on board for it. We'll go Trojans.
And I will go with you on that roller coaster ride as well. I'm picking USC. We're down to the third-string quarterback there, but I think athlete-wise, you got a lot of better athletes at skill positions than Washington does, so I'll take the Trojans. All right, our third game is the Minnesota Vikings at the Chicago Bears, Sunday, 3:30 on CBS. Jared, who do you have in that one?
I got the Bears.
Yeah, I think I got to go with the Minnesota Vikings. I think the one thing that the Bears do not have is Dalvin Cook. I think Dalvin Cook is going to be the X factor in this game, and I think the defenses will match up well, but I think the better offense in this game is the Minnesota Vikings.
All right, Paul?
Quick shout out to the Green Bay Packers, the only team who's beaten these 2 teams. Dalvin Cook's looked really good for the Vikings, and I think that defense is one of the better in the league. I got to go with Minnesota on this one.
All right, Will?
Yeah, first of all, NFC North has not lost to a non-NFC North team so far this season. And I think this really comes down to Dalvin Cook versus Khalil Mack. And I like Khalil Mack. I like the Bears. Also, I've not completely sold on my Trubisky stock. We kind of saw him do this last year. He had a phenomenal end of season. I think the Bears are going to make a statement this one. I'm not saying blowout statement, but I think they get the win here.
I really want to pick the Bears because I love their defense, but I'm not quite there with Trubisky, so I'm going to have to go with check down Kirk and the Vikings to take down the Bears on that one. So a bit of disagreement on that one. So let's move on to our final pick of the day. The Dallas Cowboys at the New Orleans Saints, Sunday 7:15 on NBC. Jared, who do you have in that one?
So for the Sunday night game, I'm going to have to go with the away team. I got to go with Dak Prescott and Ezekiel Elliott. I think they got it done.
All right, Tim.
I do not think that the New Orleans Saints defense has a chance against Dak Prescott right now in the Kellen Moore defense or the Kellen Moore offense. I think Kellen Moore has really given us a different side of Dak that we didn't see in the past couple of years, and has really brought him out as an emerging player. So I have to go with the Dallas Cowboys.
All right, Paul.
I'm going to mix it up here and go with New Orleans. I think Teddy Bridgewater stepped up pretty nicely for the Saints. And if you look at the Cowboys' first 3 opponents, they total a 1-8 record. So you just got to take that into account. They're only 2.5-point favorites. I got to go with the Saints.
All right, Will.
First of all, yeah, I love what Tim said about Kellen Moore. Loved him at Boise State. Loved him as a Detroit Lion. He gets it. He just gets how the offense works. He's really helping Dak already. And but I think the bigger key here is going to be Leighton Vander Esch and the other guys in that Cowboys defense. And I'm really not a Cowboys fan at all. Can't stand them, but they've caught my attention so far. They're a lot better than they usually are. I just don't think Teddy Bridgewater is ready for this much of a challenge. Cowboys win.
Totally agree with you. I've got the Cowboys obviously third in my undefeated teams ranking, and even if the Saints had Drew Brees, it would still be a closely contested contest. But now with Teddy Bridgewater in, who's a solid backup quarterback in the NFL right now, but he's no Drew Brees, it's an easy pick for me to go with the Cowboys. So that is it for our pick'em. So let's move on to our final topic of the day. This is some local news, boys. College game day is coming to Lincoln, Nebraska. So just really quick, what do you guys think this means to Scott Frost, the team, the program, and Nebraska as a college and as a state? Jared?
I think this is huge just because Nebraska doesn't have a pro team. So, like, they just, are on the backs of these Cornhuskers. And for Nebraska starting last year 0-6, and then this year starting out 3-1 with their only loss close to Colorado, I think this is huge for the program and Scott Frost going forward.
All right, and then just really quick, Jared, your pick for that game as well?
I really want to go with Huskers, but I'm going to go with a close one, 35-32. Ohio State wins it.
All right, Tim, your thoughts and then your pick?
Nebraska has been waiting for this for 12 years. They've been waiting for game day to come back, and the stadium is going to be rocking on Saturday night. And I think, this is just changing the atmosphere. Obviously, it was quite hard to watch Nebraska lose to Colorado, but to come back with the offense that we had against Illinois and to get game day versus Ohio State in a night game, I just think everybody's going to be ecstatic. So my pick is going to be Nebraska 35, Ohio State 31.
All right, so now we've got Jared going for the Buckeyes, Tim going for the Cornhuskers. Paul, your thoughts and your pick for Saturday night's game?
I think this is a great opportunity for the fans at Nebraska to get in on what they've wanted for so long. And also good for the team getting their name out there and everyone getting to see them improve. And also for recruiting in the future, I think a lot of recruits are going to be watching this game. So if Nebraska can do something good on Saturday night, it'll really help in that aspect. I think it'll be actually really close. There's no really atmosphere like Memorial Stadium at night, especially with this game day coming in. But I got to go with the Buckeyes. I think they kick a last-second field goal to win it 39-38.
All right. Will, your thoughts and your pick?
First of all, I'll give a little shout-out to my man Tim here because he really has been calling this college game day being here for a couple weeks now. But, everyone who's on campus knows as Tim is incredibly classy. Everyone who's here at Lincoln knows how much this means to the campus, what it means to the fans. Boy, we're not even 2 days away from the game, and boy, it's just so hyped up here. Everyone's so excited about it. I think it means a tremendous amount just to show what Scott Frost has been able to accomplish in 2 seasons, especially like Jared said after we struggled so much in the first year. But ultimately, Ohio State's rolling, and Justin Fields is about as good as any quarterback. These guys mentioned their Heisman picks, so I got to go. And I'm not 100% sold on the defense yet. I'm going to go Ohio State 42, Nebraska 30.
All right. So, again, as you guys kind of all mentioned, kind of everything about what this event means to the University of Nebraska and to this team and to this program. Obviously, you guys said that we've been waiting 12 years for this, but the campus is raucous right now. People are ready to roll. They're excited for game day, and they're excited to play Ohio State. But as you guys, all of you except for Tim alluded to, there's just still a difference in class and quality between these two teams. I'm going to have to go with Ohio State 42, Nebraska 28. I would love to pick the Huskers in this one, but it just does not seem quite feasible. But overall, it should be a great experience. And as I think one of you guys mentioned, a great marketing tool for recruits to show them that we are a national brand here at Nebraska. All right, well, that is it for today's episode. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we will see you next time.